Hello everyone, welcome back to Vaishya's YouTube channel. This is Pooja Sharma and I'm back with the next chapter of this textbook. So before we begin, here are the details of Vaishya IAS on the screen. So you can contact on this number for your enrollment details, and if you have any doubts regarding your UPSC preparation, you can also email us and visit our YouTube channel for more such videos. Let's begin. So today we will be reading about life on earth. So this chapter is very similar to all the concepts which you will be reading in Shankar IAS textbook. If in case you are following Shankar IAS videos, this will just be like a revision for all of you. So life on earth is found almost everywhere, and living organisms are found from the poles to the equator, from the bottom of the sea to several kilometers in the air, and also we see them in freezing waters to dry valleys, and also in the depths of the sea and underground water which is lying below the earth's surface. So the living organisms of the earth, they constitute the biosphere. They interact with each other and also with other environmental realms. So the biosphere includes all the living components of the earth, and it consists of all the plants and animals, including all the microorganisms that we can't see from our naked eye. So that they live on the planet earth and their interactions with the surrounding environment. So most of the organisms, they exist on the lithosphere, which is land, or in the hydrosphere, which is our water bodies, as well as in the atmosphere, the air. So there are also many organisms that move freely from one realm to the other. The biosphere and its components are very significant elements of the environment. These elements interact with other components of the natural landscape such as land, water, soil. So they are also influenced by atmospheric elements such as temperature, rainfall, moisture and sunlight. So one example is the organisms which we find in colder regions will not be the same that are found in warmer regions. So the interaction of biosphere with land, air, water are important to the growth and development and evolution of the organism. So ecology. So I think the first chapter in Shankar IAS textbook, it deals with ecology and the meaning of it and the definition and all of that. So the environment, as we all know, it is made up of abiotic and biotic components, and here on the right side you can see what are biotic components and what are abiotic components. So it would be interesting to understand that how the diversity of life forms is maintained to bring a kind of a balance. How there is this balance in the ecosystem, ecological balance. So this balance is maintained in a particular proportion so that a healthy interaction between the biotic and the abiotic factors or component will go on. So the interactions of a particular group of organisms with abiotic factors within a particular habitat will result in clearly defining energy flows that take place, and also the material cycles on land, water as well as air. So these are called as the ecological systems. So the term ecology is derived from the Greek word oikos, meaning house, and it is combined with the word logy, which means the science of or the study of. So it is basically the study of house. So literally, ecology is the study of the earth as a household of plants, human beings, animals and microorganisms. So they all live together as interdependent components. Each either it is the plants or the human beings or the animals, they are dependent on each other. So a German zoologist named Ernest Haeckel, who used the term as oikiology in 1869, he became the first person to use the term ecology. So the study of interactions between life forms, that is the biotic factors, and the physical environment, which is abiotic, is the science of ecology. So hence ecology can be defined as a scientific study of the interactions of organisms with their physical environment and along with each other. So a habitat in the ecological sense is the totality of the physical and the chemical factors that constitute the general environment. Now, as you can see in the picture over here, different animals, they have different types of habitats. Like, you find camel only in deserts. Then, the all the creatures which are there in the oceans and, in water bodies and all of that, who, the animals which we find in thick dense forests. So a system consisting of biotic and abiotic components is known as ecosystem. So all these components in ecosystem are interrelated and interact with each other, and different types of ecosystems exist with varying ranges of environmental conditions. That can be, the climate, the vegetation of that particular place. So where various plants and animal species have got adapted through evolution. So this phenomenon is known as ecological adaptation. So then we'll read about types of ecosystems. So ecosystems are two major types. One is the terrestrial, which is the land, and we have aquatic, which is underwater. So terrestrial ecosystem can be further classified into biomes. A biome is a plant and animal community that covers a large geographical area. So the boundaries of different biomes on land are determined mainly by climate. All the warmer regions, under one boundary, all the regions where, it's freezing type of a climate, very cold climate, that forms a boundary. A moderate, climate where it's balanced, that will form a different boundary. So therefore a biome can be defined as a total assemblage of plants and animal species which are interacting within the specific conditions. So these can include the various factors like rainfall, temperature, the humidity or moisture content, and also the soil conditions. So some of the major biomes of the world are forests, grasslands, then we have deserts and tundra biomes. So aquatic ecosystems can be classed as marine and freshwater ecosystems. So marine ecosystem, they include the oceans, estuaries and coral reefs, and freshwater ecosystems includes lakes, ponds, streams, marshes and the bog. So structure functions of ecosystem. So the structure of an ecosystem, it involves a description of the available plant and animal species which is present in a particular region at a particular point of time. So from a structural point of view, all ecosystems consist of both biotic and abiotic factors, and as we all know that abiotic factors include rainfall, temperature, atmospheric humidity, sunlight, soil conditions, then the inorganic substances like, nitrogen, calcium, water, carbon dioxide, phosphorus, potassium. So all of these. And then we also know that biotic factors include the producers, the consumers. So these consumers can be of three types: primary, secondary, tertiary. And also in the end we have the decomposers. So this is basically the basic classic food chain. So the producers include all the green plants which manufacture their own food through photosynthesis, and the primary consumers, they include herbivore animals like deers, goats, mice and all plant eating animals which eat plants. Then we have the carnivores, which include all the flesh eating animals like snakes, tigers, lions. So certain carnivores that feed on carnivores are known as top carnivores like hawks and mongooses. So we have one set of carnivores which feed on the herbivores, but we have this upper level of carnivores who in turn feed on those carnivores who will eat the herbivores. So decomposers are those that feed on dead organisms, for example scavengers like vultures and crows, then further breaking down of the dead matter by other decomposing agents like bacteria and various microorganisms. So the producers are consumed by the primary consumers, whereas the primary consumers are in turn being eaten by the secondary consumers. As I said, there will be this carnivore 1 who will eat the herbivore, and then we'll have this carnivore 2 who will eat carnivore 1. So it is, it is like a chain. So further, the secondary consumers are consumed by the tertiary consumers. So at every higher level you will find a carnivore who will eat the uh, consumer which is there before him. So the decomposers feed on the dead at each level and every level. They change them into various substances such as nutrients, organic and inorganic salts, which are essential for soil fertility. So organisms of an ecosystem are linked together through a food chain. So if you will see over here, this is a basic or the classic food chain over here. Here you can see producers and green plants. They provide nutrients to the soil, there's this give and take relationship. Then we have the primary consumer. Suppose we keep a deer over here. Then here, suppose you keep a hyena, secondary consumer, carnivores, hyena. And then we have the tertiary consumers, who can be a lion or a tiger, something like that. So when these animals die, either the herbivore, the carnivore or the tertiary consumer, their dead body will be the dead remains, and then this dead body is in turn eaten up by the decomposers. So you can see over here, you will get examples of all three types of food chains: grassland, land, aquatic, both, marine and क्या बोलते हैं, fresh water. So as you can see over here in this, there is a plant eating beetle. We don't have a beetle over here. I found this picture with a grasshopper, so take this only as an example. So this is feeding on this paddy stalk. So this is eaten by a frog, which is in turn eaten by a snake, and then this is our eagle, which will eat the snake. So this sequence of eating and being eaten and the resultant transfer of energy from one level to another is known as the food chain. Transfer of energy that occurs during the process of a food chain from one level to another is known as flow of energy. So food chains are not isolated from one another, and there's another example where a mouse is feeding on grain and may be eaten by a different secondary consumer, which will be a carnivore, and these carnivores may be eaten by different tertiary consumers or top carnivores. So in such situation, each of the carnivores may consume more than one type of a prey. So this is known as the food web. As a result, the food chain gets interlocked with one another. See, what happens is, in a food chain, it will be only unidirectional, okay? But in a food web, what happens? It's not that it has to move in a certain direction. Anybody will eat anything or anybody in this food web. So this interconnecting network of species is known as food web. Generally, two types of food chains are recognized. One is the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain, decomposers. So in a grazing food chain, what happens is, the first level starts with plants as producers and it ends with the carnivores as consumers at the last level, with the herbivores being at the intermediate level. So there is loss of energy at each level, which may be through respiration, excretion or decomposition. So the levels involved in a food chain will range between 3 to 5 and the energy is lost at each level. So a detritus food chain is based on the autotrophs energy, which capture initiated by the grazing animals, and also this involves the decomposition or breaking down of organic waste and dead matter, which is derived from the grazing wala food chain. So this detritus food chain, it gets its energy or the flow of energy, it gets it from this grazing food chain of the animals which are present over here, all the dead and the decay matter. So then we have types of biomes. So we know what is a biome. So now we'll look at the major biomes of the world, and there are 5 major biomes, that is a forest, desert, grasslands, aquatic and altitudinal biomes. So as you can see over here, the first one is forests. So these are the different types of forests which are found around the world: tropical, deciduous, temperate, boreal, equatorial. So you can take a screenshot of this and you can go through it. So these are the climate characteristics which are found in this region. How the climate will be over here, and here they are telling you the location where it is found, the type of soil which is present over here, and the animals and the plants which you will find over here. So you can take a screenshot of this and make a note of it. Then we have our grasslands and deserts. So you can see over here they are telling us about the different types of deserts, their location, again the temperature, and then this is the type of soil which is present in that region, and the animals which are found over here, like rabbits and antelopes and all of that, and here also. So you can again pause and take a screenshot. Then we have the aquatic and altitudinal. So over here you can see freshwater and marine, two types of. So here they'll have lakes, rivers and all of that. Here you'll see oceans and all of that, and then how the temperature will vary, and the different types of condition over there, and the life that is found in these regions, these biomes. And altitudinal wise, it will be obviously high mountain ranges and all of that, and they have mentioned, see, Himalayas, Andes and the Rockies. And the temperature obviously mainly depends upon the precipitation and all of that, and also the temperature and the latitudinal zone under which it falls. And again the condition is the slopy type of shape of the surrounding region, steep slopes and all of that, and also deciduous to tundra vegetation varying according to altitude. So here the flora and fauna, they haven't mentioned us, like they haven't given us the names. They are telling that varying upon the vegetation and according to the altitude, the animals are found over here. So then we'll go on to the biogeochemical cycles. So the sun is the basic source of energy on which all life depends. So this energy initiates the life processes in the biosphere through photosynthesis, the main source of food and energy for green plants. So everything starts from the sun. And even if the green plants have to prepare food through the process of photosynthesis, they require sunlight in order to start that process, along with other factors like water and carbon dioxide and all of that. So during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is converted into organic compounds and oxygen. Out of the total solar insolation, the incoming solar radiation that reaches the Earth's surface, only a very small fraction, that is 0.1%, is fixed in photosynthesis. So more than half is used for plant respiration, and the remaining part is temporarily stored or shifted to other portions of the plant. So life on Earth consists of a great variety of living organisms, and these living organisms, they exist and survive in a diversity of associations. So such a survival, it involves the presence of systematic flows such as the flow of energy, water, nutrients which takes place, and these flows will show us the variation in different parts of the world, in the different seasons of the year, and also under various local circumstances and conditions. So there have been studies that have shown that for the last 1 billion years, the atmosphere and hydrosphere have been composed of approximately the same balance of chemical compounds and components. So this balance of chemical elements is maintained by a cyclic passage through the tissues of plants and animals. So in the upcoming slides, we'll read about the different types of cycles present in the atmosphere or on Earth. So the cycle starts by absorbing the chemical elements by the organisms, and it is returned to the air, water and soil through decomposition. So it is a cyclic process. So obviously if it starts from here, it will again come back to the same point. So these cycles are largely energized by solar insolation. So these cyclic movements of chemical elements of the biosphere between the environment and the organism, they are referred to as biogeochemical cycles. So bio refers to living organism, geo refers to the rocks, soil, air and water of the earth, and of course chemical is the chemical components. So there are two types of biogeochemical cycles, the gaseous and the sedimentary cycle. So in the gaseous cycle, what happens is the main reservoir of nutrients is the atmosphere and the ocean. And in the sedimentary cycle, what happens is the main reservoir is the soil and the sedimentary and other rocks of earth crust. So here you can see it is the air and water, here it is the land, and all the whatever constitutes the land, like soil and other rocks of the earth's crust. Earth crust is by default the land mass. So we first up have the water cycle or the hydrologic cycle. So all living organisms, the atmosphere and the lithosphere, they maintain between them a circulation of water in solid, liquid and gaseous form, which is referred to as the water or hydrologic cycle. So as we read in previous chapters also about how the water cycle works through the process of evaporation, condensation, convection and precipitation, all of that. So that is what is the water cycle. So the carbon cycle, then we have the carbon cycle. So the carbon cycle is one of the most basic elements of all organisms. It forms the basic constituent of all organic compounds. So the biosphere contains over 500,000 carbon compounds in them, and the carbon cycle is mainly conversion of carbon dioxide. So this conversion is initiated by the fixation of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. So such conversion results in the production of carbohydrate, glucose, that may be converted to other organic compounds such as sucrose, starch and cellulose. So here some of the carbohydrates are utilized directly by the plant itself. Then during this process, more carbon dioxide is generated and released through its leaves or roots during the day. So the remaining carbohydrates not being utilized by the plant, they become part of the plant tissue. So these plant tissues are either being eaten by the herbivorous animals or they get decomposed by microorganisms. So the herbivores, they convert some of the consumed carbohydrates into carbon dioxide for the release into the air through respiration. So what happens is when we inhale, we take in oxygen, and when we exhale, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So the microorganisms decompose the remaining carbohydrates after the animal dies. So over here you can see the carbon cycle. So the carbohydrates that are decomposed by the microorganisms, they then get oxidized into carbon dioxide and are returned back to the atmosphere. Next up we have the oxygen cycle. So the oxygen is the main byproduct of photosynthesis. That's why they tell we should plant more plants and grow more trees, so that there'll be more release of oxygen. So it is involved in the oxidation of carbohydrates with the release of energy, carbon dioxide and water. So the cycling of oxygen is a highly complex process. Oxygen occurs in a number of chemical forms and also combinations, and it combines along with nitrogen to form nitrates with many other minerals and elements that form various oxides such as the iron oxide, aluminium oxide and others. So much of oxygen is produced from the decomposition of water molecules by the sunlight, which happens during photosynthesis, and it is released into the atmosphere through transpiration and respiration processes of plants. So then we have the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is a major constituent of the atmosphere, which is comprising about 78% of the atmospheric gases. It is also an essential constituent of different organic compounds such as nucleic acids, amino acids, proteins, then vitamins and pigments. So only a few types of organisms, like certain species of soil bacteria and the blue green algae, they are capable of utilizing it directly in the gaseous forms. So generally what happens is nitrogen is usable only after it is fixed. 90% of the fixed nitrogen is biological. So this principal source of free nitrogen is the action of the soil microorganisms and also associated plant roots on the atmospheric nitrogen, which is found in pore spaces of the soil. So mainly because of these soil microorganisms and also the plant roots, which release this atmospheric nitrogen, so this is found in the pore spaces of the soil. So nitrogen can be fixed in the atmosphere by lightning and cosmic radiation. So in the ocean what happens is some marine animals can fix it. After atmospheric nitrogen has been fixed into a available form, green plants can assimilate it. So what happens is, how our body can differentiate when a foreign body enters inside our body, same way the plants, they get to know that if they can consume or uh, take in that form of nitrogen to use it in the process of photosynthesis and for the other things. So this is what they are telling us, that after atmospheric nitrogen has been fixed into available form, the green plants can assimilate it. So herbivorous animals feeding on plants in turn consume some of it. So obviously when that nitrogen is present in the plants and when these herbivorous animals feed, that nitrogen is going indirectly inside this herbivorous animal's body in the form of plants. So dead plants and animals and the excretion of nitrogenous waste are converted into nitrites by the action of bacteria which is present in the soil. So whenever this bacteria comes in contact with these nitrites, it forms a certain type of nitrate. So some bacteria can even convert nitrites into nitrates that can be used again by green plants. So as you can see how it can keep going on and on and on. Again plants get off nitrates as a resource and again they can use it. So there are still other types of bacteria which are capable of converting nitrates into free nitrogen, a process known as denitrification. So can you see over here, we have nitrogen which is in the atmosphere, then we have fixation of that nitrogen, the biological fixation and also the industrial fixation, three types. This fixation forms these nitrate compounds and then again this denitrification process takes place. Then we have other mineral cycles. So other than carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and hydrogen being the principal geochemical components of biosphere, there will be many other smaller minerals cycles which also occur as critical nutrients for the plant and animal life. So these mineral elements, they required by living organisms, are obtained initially from inorganic and sources such as phosphorus, sulfur, calcium and potassium. So they usually occur as salts which are dissolved in soil water or lakes, streams and seas. So we all know, right, that even soil has some amount of moisture content present in it. So that moisture content or that water which is present in soil, it will have these different types of minerals. So mineral salts come directly from the earth crust by weathering and other processes, where the soluble salts enter the water cycle, eventually reaching the sea. Somehow they will get mixed up with something and they will go and reach the ocean bodies or sea and other water bodies. Other salts are returned to the earth's surface through sedimentation, and after weathering they again enter the cycle. So this this is a process which keeps going on and on. So all living organisms fulfill their mineral requirements from mineral solutions in their environment. Other animals receive their mineral needs from plants and animals they consume or eat. After the death of living organisms, the minerals are returned to the soil and water through decomposition and flow. Next, we have the ecological balance. So, all the cycles which we saw now in the earlier slides, this is a process or a way in which the ecosystem or the nature maintains its balance, so that nothing happens extra also and nothing happens less also. It will be in balance. So, this ecological balance is a state of dynamic type of balance within a community of organisms in a habitat or ecosystem. So it can happen when the diversity of the living organisms remains relatively stable. So the gradual changes will take place, but that happens only through the natural succession. So it can only be explained as a stable balance in the numbers of each species in an ecosystem. It can't happen that a group of or a community of species is continuously declining, in very with an increasing number. It's declining with an increasing number. And in the same way, if the species of a particular community if their population starts increasing too much, that will also cause an imbalance. So that is what it's telling us. So this balance is brought about by the fact that certain species, they'll compete with one another, determined by the environment in which they grow, like the survival of the fittest. So this balance is also attained by the fact that some species will depend on others for their food and sustenance. Such accounts are encountered in vast grasslands where the herbivorous animals like deer, zebras, buffaloes are found in plenty. So on the other hand, what happens is the carnivorous animals like tigers, lions, they are not when we look at the ratio of deer, zebras versus tigers and lions, you'll see that the ratio of these carnivore animals, it is usually not large in numbers. They hunt and feed on herbivores, thereby controlling their population. Suppose if there were no tigers and lions, the population of these the population of these herbivores will keep increasing. Now when their population keeps on increasing, what will happen? They will need more food and resources and all of that. They will the basic food, or the common food for these herbivores is grasslands and all of that. And when they keep overgrazing on grasslands, and if they keep eating, it can cause a lot of problems like soil erosion. Then there will be scarcity for the domestic cattle. So all these are the consequences when there is an imbalance. So in the plants, what happens is any disturbance in the native forest, such as clearing the forest for shifting cultivation, usually brings about a change in the species distribution. So this change is due to the competition where the secondary forest species such as grasses, bamboos or pines, they will overtake the native species, changing the original forest structure. This is called succession. So imagine there is this thick dense forest of a particular species of trees. Suddenly there will be other types of trees which start growing over there. It will start from an individual tree, and then it will keep increasing. Then what will happen, this second type of species or the second type of tree will become dominant in that area, and it will change the complete landscape or forest structure. So the ecological balance may be disturbed due to the introduction of new species, natural hazards or human causes. So human interference has affected the balance of plants communities, which is leading to disturbances in the ecosystem. So such disturbances, they bring about numerous secondary successions. So human pressure on the earth's resources, it has put a very heavy toll on the ecosystem. And this has destroyed its originality and has caused a lot of side effects or adverse effects to the general environment. So ecological imbalances have they have been brought about by many natural calamities like floods, landslides, diseases, erratic climatic occurrences, and we can also include forest fires, because we know very well how much damage forest fires can cause. So there is a very close relationship between the plant and animal communities within particular habitats. So diversity of life in a particular area, it can be employed as an indicator of the habitat factor. Also, proper knowledge and understanding of such factors will provide a strong base for protecting and conserving the. So that's all for today. I'll be back with the next chapter. Make sure that you like and share, and also subscribe to our channel for more such videos. And please leave a one liner comment in this comment section below as a feedback or something like that. Until then, all the best and study well. Thank you.